Hello, hello. It's Wednesday and not Tuesday. We decided to skip doing our normal lunchtime IG Live on Election Day, even though today feels just as crazy, if not more crazy. Hello, and let's view your request and go. So today, Alyssa Pressman, I'm such a big fan of hers, is joining me. We're going to, hello, how
Hi.
you doing? All right, all set, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
It's so good to see you.
Yeah,
We
you
decided
too.
to not do a normal Tuesday lunchtime IG Live because it was election day,
Yeah,
and I really hadn't thought through that like today was going to be just as crazy.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have this break. I needed like something that forced me to turn off CNN.
I know, I'm with you. I actually haven't turned it on this morning just because I'm like, I'm gonna wait it out and do some other things first because it
It's
is
really
what
smart.
it is.
Yeah, so in service of doing something else, really
Yeah,
excited to talk to you. I would love to have you kind of share a little bit about your story and who you are. Um,
yeah.
I I was going to tell everybody that I just met your dad, who's such a doll, and I love him and his mustache. Um, my dad had a mustache until he really started going gray, and then he felt like it made him look old. But as soon as I saw your dad, I was like, yes, mustache
Yes.
dad.
Both of my parents are like very committed to their 70s/80s
Mm.
grooming. Like my mom still kind of has the Farrah Fawcett hairdo, and my dad has rocked that mustache since he was like 16. So
Oh, I love it.
he also asked if he needed to join today in case anyone needed to see his breasts again. I was like, I think we're okay. But he's very proud of that video. So
He was so great. You know, for those of you watching or who watch this in the future and don't know, we did a Feel It on the First video with a whole bunch of different men who have some kind of relationship to me or to breast cancer themselves or
yeah.
someone that they love. And it was so amazing. I really, really enjoyed the process of having those Zoom calls. I think there were 14 or 15 different people who we ended up doing it. And I had conversations that I was totally unprepared to have. Some men in that video are breast cancer survivors, and I had a call with another breast cancer survivor who didn't want to do it, and he said, nobody wants to see my body. And I was so taken aback and sad about that comment, and I really was like, I know what to say. Like, if you jumped on this call today and you said, I feel like shit, I feel like I look like a troll, I'd be like, oh
Yes.
my God, listen, I would know what to say to you. And I
But when
just
men,
realized that I had no idea how to interact with men who are feeling really vulnerable about their bodies.
yes. I think like too, I think several years ago when I was first working as a therapist at an agency, I had a man also express, and it was the first time I'd had a man express to me in a therapeutic setting, like that he really struggled with viewing his body. And I also remember being really taken aback for a second and then being like, of course, like we all have different ways that we are socialized in our bodies, and like everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people of all genders struggle with their body and things like that.
Yeah, I just realized that when I don't necessarily understand the issue or can't empathize in the same way, that I really struggled with how to have that conversation. But it made me, you know, I was filming those now like a week and a half ago, and it really made me reconsider so many things about how we talk about this and what breast cancer looks like in representation and how I think about men and their bodies and their health and when they talk to the doctor. And it was awesome. So thanks again to your
Yeah.
dad for doing it, and tell him I appreciate his willingness to join this IG Live and be topless with us.
Anytime now. He's done it once. It's like once you do it once. Yeah, no, and I appreciate you so much for doing that. And I think there needs to be more conversations around all genders when it comes to cancer and specifically breast cancer. We sometimes take on a very gendered focus lens on it, which is important to recognize women's health, but also to say like this affects people of all gender identities, like everyone, and make sure that that conversation is happening. So I loved when you reached out to the video. And actually, my dad is the BRCA1 mutation carrier, or he is the one that gave me that genetic mutation. So I think too, like when there's conversations around cancer and things like that, people are like, oh, what's the history, on your mom's side? But for
Right.
me, it was my dad's side and where I got it from. And I never thought about that before we started testing for the mutation, and cancer started showing up in that side of the family.
Yeah. So you're a BRCA1 carrier?
Yes,
And
BRCA1
you had a preventative mastectomy, is that right? Oh, did you get
Yes,
a call?
sorry, no one ever calls me. I turn off the whatever.
It's okay.
Yes. So I'm the BRCA1 mutation carrier. My dad got tested. There was a family member on his side that had breast cancer. It's like, we started testing, and he tested positive. And so I have two sisters, one's biological. And so we both tested, and she tested negative and I tested positive for the mutation. At the time that I had that testing done, I was 25. And it kicked off, basically my options were to do the screening and monitoring or to look into having surgery. And ahead of time, I was like, okay, well, if I have the mutation, I'm definitely going to do the double mastectomy. Like, I knew that I would do it. It was just a matter of timing. And once I went through like the immediate like MRI, when I got that MRI done, I remember laying there and being like, I cannot believe that they are looking for cancer right now. Like 4 months ago, I have other health stuff, but cancer, I just had not ever conceived of it. And so I was laying there, I'm 25, and I'm like, what is happening? And I just remember waiting for the phone call. And when I saw the call come through from the radiologist, just the absolute terror in my system. And I was like, I cannot do this like throughout the year, and like function. This is going to rule my life. And so I knew that I was going to do it sooner. And, I found out my results in December of 2016. And by April, I had the double mastectomy.
Wow. Yeah, I think it's so amazing. And this is one of the things that I just love so much about you is that you trust your gut and you like listen to your body. I started screening when I was 28 after my son was born, and literally let it rule my life for years.
Yeah.
Of going to MRIs, ultrasounds, mammograms, my doctor wanting my BMI. I just had a baby the first time I went. My doctor wanted my BMI to be 18, and I like lost 35 pounds. Like I went on the Special K diet. Like I starved myself. I was like, every single decision that I was making was how to not get cancer.
Right.
And it took me a really long time to decide that I didn't want just that screening to be how I punctuated my life.
Yeah.
And I love that you decided so quickly, like, this isn't for me and I'm going to take action, because I think, for some of us, it's easier to like be afraid or to wait to find out, or to just do what the doctor says and to not ask more questions, or to just say like, oh, I'm uncomfortable. And I guess that's just what's supposed to happen. I'm just supposed to be uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely freaks some people out how quickly they were like, why don't you do XYZ? Like I was in the middle of grad school and I was like, I just remember having a moment one time I was taking a shower and I just felt like I got out of the shower and I kind of had that. And for me, it's like intuitive knowing that I needed to move faster than what I was thinking. And so I decided to do it. But, like I have no regrets. And at the same time, I look now at some of the technology with the surgeries that they're doing and the way that they're, are preserving sensation. And I'm like, oh, if I had waited a few years, that things could have been. So I just also want to normalize, like, for people that feel like, oh, when they hear people say no regrets, it's like, I don't have regrets I had the surgery, but I also want to be honest in the humanity of like, these things are hard.
Yeah, it's such a hard choice. And to know what kind of reconstruction, or if you want reconstruction. And, I was saying this, I have a childhood friend who just recently was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she wanted to find out what kind of reconstruction she should do. And the doctor made some recommendations. And I had a conversation with her, and it was interesting because if your doctor hasn't had reconstruction, they just don't know.
No.
They can talk about it from the clinical side and from anecdotal evidence of other women and data, but they can't talk to what it's like to live in a body that has sensation or doesn't have sensation, or if your implants are under the muscle or over the muscle, or you decided to stay flat, and what that does to like your quality of life. And I think, to your point, some people do have to move slower because they want to make some of those considerations. But, I think that goes to the same thing I was saying, is like trusting that yourself and what works for you.
Yeah, and it really is a personality thing. I'm a person who moves quickly once I make a decision, and that doesn't mean that everyone else is like that. And so I think it's really important to honor your process. Like there are people that are more analytical and need to gather all of the information and sit with it for a certain period of time. And like you got to just honor what works for you, and there's no shame in moving at whatever pace that you need to.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So do you mind telling everybody a little bit about you and your coaching practice?
Yeah. Yes, so I'm a licensed clinical therapist. I got my master's in social work, and then I worked for several years as in the specific field of grief therapy at an agency that worked with families who had lost a loved one, kids who had lost anyone close to them, and then parents who had experienced the death of a child. And that's the side that I spent most of my time working on. And I did that for several years. And I got a coaching certification in love, sex, and relationships. That was very intensive. And I started kind of building my work and coaching on the side while I was still working full time. And over the summer, I moved because my husband works he's starting residency. And so we moved and I launched my coaching full time. So the work I do now will always be informed by my experience and everything I learned as a grief therapist, because there's so much trauma in when you talk about death. And for me, sex and death are like two sides, or, different sides of the same coin. They're both taboo. They're both very real human experiences that everyone is going to navigate and go through. And I just think that there should be a lot more conversations about them. So the work I do now really focuses on supporting women and cultivating more intimacy and connection within themselves, within their personal relationships, and living in a way that honors life that feels good for them, instead of just all the shoulds of how we're supposed to be. And so sex and pleasure is really center in that. And then also navigating trauma, because almost every single person has experienced trauma of some sort, and that has to be addressed.
Yeah, I think that is so very true. And for those of you who didn't see on our Instagram already, Alyssa and I just did an interview where we talk a little bit about her practice and her methodology and the thinking around how to approach getting your needs met. And I love that you've had this sort of like really multifaceted approach to thinking about life, almost like through the lens of death.
Yes.
This is like a total aside. One of my college, a guy I went to college with who is like in a friend group, lost a daughter. She was 3. She got hit in the head by a piece of like the building, like on the Upper West Side, New York, hit her in the head, and she died. And he wrote the most beautiful book. It's called Once More We Saw Stars. Have you read it?
No, I've never even heard of it. I'll have to look into it.
It's such a beautiful book. I listened to him read it on audiobook. I have a cousin who lost a daughter to SARS.
Yes.
SARS. What's SIDS? What's the acronym when you... I'm totally blanking.
When they're older?
No, when they're younger and they just stop breathing. That it used to be in your crib, like that you would like suffocate against something. I'm totally blanking. Anyway, like we've had some children die in my family, and it was really heartwarming to hear someone talk about the process of losing a child and grief and coming back to love and having more children. And I think you might really enjoy hearing about his approach through thinking through it, which is completely an aside from our conversation.
It's so good though. There needs to be more conversations about that. And like something that I think about and I found in the breasty community and in all of these things is these things are so taboo and people are so uncomfortable. Like my clients that had lost a child, people moved away from them because they were so uncomfortable. And I find that that crosses over to all kinds of traumas. And in the cancer community, people are always talking about how they're surprised by how many friends leave or kind of move away. They lose intimate personal relationships of all kinds. And I think for what I recognize that as is other people's discomfort with feeling uncomfortable and difficult things and reckoning with their own mortality. We don't do that. We're so death negative, and it's like we're all gonna die. And people hate when I say that and get really, I'm like super fun at parties, but it's true. And it's like we don't have to do it this way. It doesn't have to be this way.
Yeah, and I think one of the major takeaways I had even before I edited our conversation and reread it, but like in the moment when we hung up, I thought like so much of our experience with our friends or our family or our intimate partners can be improved with better conversation. And just the idea that, like, of course, people are going to be uncomfortable if you're sick or if they don't know how to treat you or they don't know what's going to help you. And really understanding how to communicate your needs is
Yeah.
so important. And it
Yeah.
goes back to like knowing yourself, which is one of those things you kept saying is like settling into your body or being in your body. And there were so many times that I saw it on the page in front of me and I was like, right, when even if you realize you're not uncomfortable, if you don't tell your friend who is uncomfortable, like, hey, I know you're uncomfortable and here's why I'm not, and this is how we can interact through these moments that feel difficult, it's on both of you, right? Like we like to blame the
Yeah.
people who leave, but if we
Yeah.
didn't give them the tools to stay, it's on us too.
Yeah. You know, these relationships are the stuff of life. Like relationships are what make our lives really rich. And I think when it comes to discomfort, we are so conditioned that as soon as something feels comfortable, we back away, turn away, like try and get out of it. And it's like the richness happens if we can like tiptoe into that discomfort and let ourselves experience it and be like, oh, I can feel this and not die. And I can like navigate this uncomfortable conversation and not die versus what we do is just shut down because we're so uncomfortable and we just can't be bothered. And then we lose out on a lot of moments where we could have more connection because we just let the discomfort win.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you said that I really liked was about that doing that is like building up muscle memory. And
Yeah.
every time you recognize your discomfort and you figure out, okay, why am I uncomfortable? Is it because this is about me or my
Yeah.
feelings about my death, or is this about the other person? And really figuring out the root of what you're feeling and why, and then talking about it, which might
Yeah.
be more uncomfortable, but
Yes.
you're building up that ability. And it's really empowering to think of it that way, that
Yes.
you're like learning a new skill.
You really are. It is like building a muscle and it takes time. And I think about one of my favorite teachers that I've learned from when we do embodiment practices, which is just like really getting in your body. And we do it through like breathing, sounding, and movement. She will say, if you are feeling at the edge of your discomfort, then stay with it as much as you can, right? This is not overriding your body. If you feel horrific, you need to honor that. But like we are so taught that as soon as we feel a little bit of discomfort, we should do whatever we have to make it go away. And it's like actually the gold is if you can be with it. If we can be with ourselves in anything that's happening or we're feeling, we build such a trust, and it means that we can show up for other people in a way that we can't. If we can't even sit with our own discomfort, how are we going to hold space for another person's pain, discomfort, hard feelings? It's really hard to do that.
Yeah, and I think the other side of that, which also was so fun to talk through, is that then when the other person is telling you how they feel or what they think or about their discomfort, that you don't personalize it and you don't make it about you. Because if you figure out a way to communicate with someone or find your own discomfort and you're in the presence of someone who's doing the same thing and they want to talk about it, that you can open-mindedly approach what someone is saying to you about themselves and about their experience and about their feelings, and not make it about you and immediately react. And that's also
Yep.
something that feels like, I don't know if we're taught or it's human nature, but it's such a disservice, I
Yeah.
think, when we have this feeling and we're just immediately like, oh my God, Alyssa just said this thing and it rubbed me the wrong way. And then I'm going to jump down your throat or bolt. Like,
Yeah.
understanding that that is, you have a responsibility in both ways to be the communicator and to understand yourself and be uncomfortable, but then allow someone else to do the same thing.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to like, we are constantly like, if someone's upset with us, the immediate is like, how can I fix it? And I do this in my own intimate relationship too. And I have to constantly remember when it's happening and I'm activated and I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do with what I'm being told right now, to go like, whoa, this is not personal. Like I'm going to let this person have an experience in front of me. I'm not going to personalize it and jump in and like get in my shit, because then I've just hijacked them sharing with me and I've made it not safe for them to do it in the future. So I say that with so much love and compassion and no judgment, because that is an active practice for me all of the time, and mostly in romantic relationships, which is like with the clients I support, same thing. That's where it plays out big time for a lot of people.
Oh yeah, I can see that. And I think, you know, so much of what we talked about. And I'm going to, again, in a minute, direct people to read the interview, because I think there's so many helpful, useful hints in there about whether you're in a couple or not, thinking about how you communicate your needs at all different points, whether you're someone who's had trauma or cancer or a combination of both or neither, you know, like
Yeah.
that it's all sort of part of this human condition, and we can learn how to behave and show up as adults who are thoughtful and considerate and loving. And that's
Yeah.
like self-loving and also loving of the other person who you're with.
Yes. Yep. And a lot of it comes down to giving people room to be and express and feel without us trying to regulate their experience. Because even if we're doing that out of love, it's actually manipulative. We're not just letting people be however they are in that moment. And when people do that, I usually find that it's because they're struggling to regulate themselves. So they feel like if I can kind of control how everyone else is feeling, then that makes me feel safe. Well, that's manipulative. You have to regulate yourself so that other people can be however they are in that moment. That's real love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so great. Well,
Yeah.
so if people want to follow along, obviously you're here with us now, but if someone wants to know more or kind of like keep up with you, where are the best places to find information about all things Alyssa Pressman?
Yes, best thing right here on Instagram. It is by far where I am most active and where I'm constantly talking all things that sometimes people can't believe I'm saying on my page, but I think it's important to talk about. So that's where you can find me, right here.
Yeah, I love it so much. When I hung up with your dad after doing the breast exam video, he said, I think what Alyssa's doing is so important. She's such a great daughter. And I said, yeah, I'm completely amazed by her. You should be so proud. And he said, but you know, I let her mother look at her Instagram and just tell me if there's things I should see. I never look myself.
No, I love it. Like, that's me honoring like my own dad's, you know, it's okay. Like, I'm not like upset. He's always been so supportive, but it's really funny. I actually did, like, I collaborated with another woman and did a 14-day diary of like my self-pleasure practice for 14 days. And my mom said to me, she said, you know, I love you and I support everything that you're doing, but I don't think I want to read that. And I said, it's okay if you don't want to read the details of how I masturbate. I support that decision. I know that you love and support me. And like, I support your choice to not look.
Yeah, that's so awesome. You have such great parents, and I'm delighted to meet your dad.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for making the time. I'm going to throw up a link to our interview on the Brilliantly Journal again.
Yes.
And people should stay tuned, because I think we're going to continue to kind of overlap and bump into each other and do some cool stuff about sex and wellness and identity and health. And I'm really just so delighted to know you and be working with you.
The feeling is mutual and I adore you. So thank you.
Well, have a good day and hang in there, okay?
Yeah. Take care of yourself.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.